On the Ukrainian battlefield, we could often see Iranian-built drones bombing Ukrainian cities in recent weeks. On October 23, the Iranian gas company announced that it would export 40 large gas turbines to Russia for use in natural gas pipelines. In the past, Iran gave the impression that it was a backward country producing oil, but now it exports technical equipment to Russia, as well as main military equipment and important civilian equipment. Is Iran too strong or Russia is too weak? In fact, neither Iran nor Russia is an industrial powerhouse, but Iran has been blocked for many years and has been forced to fend for itself. With the help of civilian technology leaked from Western countries, Iran has built a low-level industrial system. And Russia has been living too comfortably these past few years. It can make a living by selling high-priced oil. It has completely lost the ability to develop industry and pursue national goals. Therefore, after being suddenly sanctioned, it has to ask Iran for help. The 2019 Iranian cruise missile attacks on Saudi oil bases showed that Iran does not have particularly sophisticated technology. But if the competition in the world market is not considered, Iran can make a lot of things. Especially when there is no full-scale war, it is possible to piece together some purely civilian materials and use the GPS civilian signals that the United States is reluctant to turn off, and can also accumulate good navigation weapons and launch asymmetric attacks. Under the pressure of the current global market, it is meaningless for a medium-sized country to become a local industrial power with a seemingly complete system, and the gap with the mainstream of the world is bound to grow wider and wider. However, Iran is isolated from the world market by sanctions. Whether it is willing or not, Iran's industrial capacity must tighten its belt and consume resources to support some industries that are inefficient in other countries' eyes. Now it turns out that inefficient industries are also industries. And Russia, which has been sanctioned, has to rely on Iran's inefficient industries to save its lives. The statistics of Russia's exports in 2019 can be found online. Let me read the data. The first place is crude oil, accounting for 37%, the second place is refined oil, accounting for 20%, the third place is for non-designated goods, accounting for 17%, the fourth place is coal, accounting for 5%. These four products add up to nearly 80%, and the remaining exports are all raw materials or primary products. Only 18th place is technical products, gas turbines such as turbojets and turboprops, accounting for 0.75% of the total export value, not as many as the frozen fish fillets exported by Russia. Therefore, from the perspective of the international market, Russia with a population of 140 million is a raw material base, a gas station and the coat of a superpower army. Manufacturing is larger than Australia, which has 25 million people, but less than Canada, which has 38 million people. Now that the war is not going well, it is not surprising to find Iran to import drones and gas turbines. Although the overall scale of Russian industry is not good, the world has been at war, and Russia is still exporting weapons. In 2021, before the Russian-Ukrainian war, Kazakhstan bought Russia's Su-35 fighter jets. In 2022, after the outbreak of the war, Russia delivered S-400 anti-aircraft missiles to India. This shows that Russia's military industry is still running. Why can't it build some drones by itself? Those large weapons exported by Russia, although the data numbers have changed, are either products that have been finalized in the Soviet era, or products that are half developed in the Soviet era. For the products that were stereotyped in the Soviet era, Russia had to rely on luck to produce them, because the industrial chain was not necessarily all in Russia. The most important tank base, Kharkiv vehicle plant, is in Ukraine. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Russia only built one type of large warship, the Type 11356 frigate that was injured by an unmanned boat in the Crimean naval port a few days ago, and wanted to sell it to India. After Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, Ukraine no longer provided marine gas turbines. Russia could only sell the hull to India, and then India would go to Ukraine to buy the engine. As for products that have not been developed in the Soviet era, Russia basically relies on French technology to make a patch, in order to barely bring a little 21st century color. For example, the best mass-produced tank in Russia is the T-90 tank, which has already been tested in the Soviet era. When the Soviet Union disintegrated, only the fire control system had not been completed. Then France provided the fire control system and night vision device, and the T-90 tank could only be exported to India before it could go to the battlefield. For another example, Russia's current Su-30SM fighter is a downgraded version of the Su-30MK fighter developed for India. The fighter jets obtained by India also used French technology. After Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, important parts were embargoed by the West, so the planes obtained by Russia were forced to downgrade, and the high-end French diffraction HUD was removed, and the pilots only can look down at the meter like in the 80s. More importantly, even if the supply chain left by the Soviet Union can barely operate, it basically depends on foreign funds to maintain its operation, and then the Russian military has the opportunity to take some remaining foreign trade orders. The aforementioned weapons, whether they are naval, land, and air force equipment, can only be maintained by Indian funds. Production lines that India does not want, such as the Navy Su-33 aircraft, can only be closed. Now Russia's own aircraft carriers can't use the heavy Su-33, only the same MiG-29K as the Indians. Therefore, Russia's military industry has not only not progressed on the basis of the Soviet Union, but has deteriorated. The air-launched ballistic missiles and nuclear-powered cruise missiles abandoned by the Soviet Union were turned over by Russia to pretend to be new weapons. In terms of drones, especially small drones, the former Soviet Union has little accumulation, so Russia has no room for reference. Soviet military drones are mainly long-range, high-speed large drones, weighing dozens of tons at every turn. They use the engines of the main fighter jets, and are often used once, only to bring back reconnaissance information. Such drones cannot be used even if they are given to the current Russian army. In the last decade, the drones that have changed the battlefield have mainly progressed from microelectronics technology, and the control system has been transformed from an electromechanical structure to a fully electronic system. So drones can be significantly lighter, smaller in size, and their price will gradually drop from the level of a military aircraft to that of a civilian car, and they can perform more tasks. If precision is not particularly required, the price of the lowest military drone is already the level of a motorcycle. So middle countries can also develop their own drones. Drones are different from other main battle equipment. Usually, the training consumption is not large, but when they are on the battlefield, it is common for a battalion to lose more than a dozen aircraft every day. If a country wants to have a steady supply of drones when it is at war, it must have a strong civilian drone industry, at least a developed household electrical appliance industry, in order to spread the cost of electronic components and injection molding machines. Turn drones into mass-produced consumables. Russia does not have the Soviet Union's accumulation in this regard, nor does it have the support of its own electronics industry, so the small drones produced are very reluctant, not as good as the civilian equipment of American Express companies and large farms. For example, Russia's only reliable surveillance fighting integrated Orion drone has a takeoff weight of 1 ton and can only carry more than 200 kilograms of weapons, and it is not cheap. Before the war, Russia reluctantly ordered dozens of them. After the war, the Orion drone was shot down by anti-aircraft fire. Ukraine found that all the key components in it were from the United States and Japan, and they were convinced that Russia could not do mass production. So after a few months of fighting, Russia is looking for Iran to buy cheap drones. However, Iran has also been blocked for so many years, and it has no historical experience. Why can it still build drones for Russia? Because Iran is really blocked for decades, and it can use the power of the religious regime to concentrate resources to deal with it. Therefore, although Iran's industry is not profitable, it is still developing. It will open up new tracks according to its own needs, and use the materials that can be obtained to start a little drone industry. Of course, the Iranian economy revolves around oil, but it insists on import substitution. Before the latest round of increased sanctions, Iran's auto production reached 1.5 million units, equivalent to India's 2009 level and close to Russia's peak annual output of 1.7 million. Even after being sanctioned, the Iranian auto industry has been downgraded. And newly built cars also have ABS and airbags, while the Russian-made Lada sedan has now cancelled ABS and airbags, and even the engine has replaced EFI with carburetor. It's almost a 1980s level car. This once again proves that Russia does not have any practical technology over the former Soviet Union. The industrial decline of oil exporting countries is a common law in the world, commonly known as the Dutch disease. In the 1960s, the Netherlands prospered with offshore oil for more than a decade, raising wages and attracting capital to flow into oil-related industries. Even if it is a service industry for employees of the oil industry, it is more profitable than developing industrial technology. When the oil revenue gradually declined, the Netherlands found that its overseas industrial product market was robbed by others. The factories that were very competitive in the past were closed, leaving only the mined oil wells and the service industry around the oil. The economy stagnated for another 10 years. During the outbreak of the Dutch disease, as long as the oil could be exported freely, the consumption of the whole people was still increasing. When domestic companies close their factories to engage in the service industry, they will inevitably need to buy foreign products to fill the vacancies. On the other hand, if foreign products cannot be imported casually, domestic factories can sell products at high prices, and the Dutch disease will not be too severe. Iran, it has been sanctioned by the West since 1979. It can neither export oil nor import anything, especially military technology. This of course suppressed the Iranian economy, but also unexpectedly eased the Dutch disease. Iran has to organize its own production domestically. Instead, it can now export drones and gas turbines to Russia. Of course, the cost of breaking away from the world market is very high. After spending several times the resources, Iran can only produce products of lower quality than the international market, and the price will definitely not be lower. There is a wave of price increases in Iran every 1 or 2 years. There is also a lot of social pressure in Iran.